Hello everyone. This video presents the most notable and prominent stages that children process to acquire their first language. According to our coursebook, these stages can be classified into: number 1, the pre-stage, which includes the cooing and babbling. Number 2, the transitional stage, which includes the one-word stage, the two-word stage, and the telegraphic stage. The last stage is the language stage, where children are found to be more fluent in using the language they acquire. So what we find here in this stage, a development in terms of morphology, syntax, and semantics. Of course, we have different classifications conducted to shed light on these stages, but what we are really concerned is with the classifications found in our own coursebook here. Now, to start with, we need to know more about the cooing stage. With the cooing stage, it is not a language stage, by the way. As I said, it's a pre-linguistic stage speech. What we find, it is a stage of infants' pre-linguistic speech development and consists of the production of single-syllable vowel-like sounds. Now, this verbal behavior of infants during the first year of life is termed to be the pre-linguistic period. Why it is pre-linguistic? Why it isn't a linguistic period? Because it does not contain actual words. What we have is common noises during early infancy, including crying, cooing, and variations in patterns of intonation. Cooing is also a stage of pre-linguistic speech that is characterized by infants' first non-crying verbal behavior, consisting of brief vowel-like utterances such as long oo, long a sounds, or consonant vowel, a combination of a consonant and a vowel, such as the goo and koo and so on. So all these provide what? Vocal practice and entertainment of infant and aids in the development of motor control over vocalization. Now, in the beginning here, as you see again, we have the cooing stage. How to define it? It is the earliest use of speech-like sounds, which has been described as cooing. You see here? Now, when does this happen? It happens during the first few months of life, of course, after birth. Now, here, the child gradually becomes capable of producing sequences of vowel-like sounds. And also, in this stage, the child, a newborn baby, tries to develop or is found to develop the ability to bring the back of the tongue into regular contact with the back of the palate. Okay, this allows the process of producing more and more vowels and consonants. Let's see. Now, this allows the infant to create sounds similar to the velar consonants like k and j. Now, hence the common description as cooing and gooing for this type of production. Now, in this stage, it is found, or the child is found, to be able to produce, as I said, speech-like sounds. This is one thing. And the second thing is the biological development in terms of using different parts of the tongue to be in contact with the palate to produce different vowels and consonants, or combinations of a consonant and a vowel. The second pre-language stage is the babbling stage. Now, this stage is very early stage, of language development, usually occurring around age 6 to 8 months. Okay. Now, in which here we have we can notice children spontaneously produce all sorts of non-sensual, unrelated sounds. Again, no real words are formed at this point, but children are just beginning to put sounds together in order to form words, which happens after the babbling stage. Now, the children, or this process of language development, is associated with the process or with the time of sitting up and producing a number of different vowels and consonants. Now, the definition of the babbling stage is found to be it's found to be that between 6 and 8 months, when the child is trying or starting to sit and produce a number of different vowels and consonants, okay? As well as what? Combinations of such as ba, 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 so you see here, and ga, 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 all together, sequentially, sorry. This type of sound production is described as the babbling. Now, this is the one thing. Around 9 to 10 months, we have to see recognizable intonation patterns to the consonants and vowel combinations being produced, as well as variation in the combination of like ba, ba, da, da. You see here in the beginning we have, with the cueing, we have just ba maybe, or de, or ke. Later, in the beginning of the pre-linguistic stage, which is the babbling stage, the child tries to start producing ba, ba, ba only, and then in a late stage, within the same stage, babbling stage, a combination of, you see here, ba, ba, and da, da. What's found here is nasal sounds are become more common. Nasal means what? The sound like, or the vowels like, consonants like ma, na, ng. So they are common and certain syllable sequences, such as ma, 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 da, da, da. Of course, it is interpreted to be like mama or dada. These are all inevitably interpreted by patterns as versions of mama and dada and repeated back to the child. Now, as children begin to pull themselves into standing position, so now after the sitting position, we find a child starts to stand, and with this standing position, we have also another development in terms of language acquisition. During the 10th and 11th month, they become capable of using their vocalizations to express emotions and emphasis, and this is a very, very important, notable stage in the development of acquiring the language. Now, this late babbling stage, we have early babbling stage, and then we have the late babbling stage. It's characterized by more complex syllable combinations like ma, da, ga, and ba. You see, we started, or the child starts with the cooing to produce ke, maybe le. They are very easy sounds for that child to produce. Then a combination of these sounds, and then we have ma, da, ga, and ba to refer to something. I don't know actually. It depends on the child. The child may use da to refer to dad, or ma to refer to mama, but maybe something else. It depends on the child and the environment where the child grows up. Now, a lot of sounds play attempted imitations. So now what happens here for the child is trying to imitate the caregiving or those people who are around the adult people, but this theory is going to be discussed in further details later. This pre-linguistic language use of sound provides the child with some experience. Now, this is very important to note here, that the late period, or the late babbling stage, helps the child to acquire and to save some experience of the social role of speech, because adults tend to react to the babbling stage or to the babbling, however, incoherent, as if it is actually the child's contribution to social interaction. What we have to note actually is the social development. It means what? It means the ability for that child to be able to react socially to those adults who are around him or her. So this is very important stage in the biological as well as in the maturation of the brain of that child. Now, after the transactional stage, cooing and babbling stage, we need to know more about a transactional stage, which is a one-word and a two-word stage. It is a transactional because during this period, the child is capable to produce words, and these words are understandable as well as comprehensible, interpretable. Now, they are transactional because they are not primitive. They are not a likely pre-linguistic stage production. Nor is it a language or a fluent language which enables the child to speak fluently. Now, during this, the child starts to produce words like during this period. So, words like milk, cookies, cat, cup, and so on. Sometimes we find children to be able to produce combination of words like what's that. That's why the writer of this book prefers to call this stage, the one-word stage, as a single unit word. However, these combination of words mean maybe one word, but it is preferably for the writer to use the one single or single unit word to be more accurate than to be a one-word stage. Now, what we sometimes need use the term holophrastic. What is holophrastic? As a definition, it is a single form functioning as a phrase or a sentence. So if you are asked the definition or about the definition of holophrastic speech, this is it. It is a single form functioning as a phrase or a sentence to describe an utterance that could be analyzed as a word, a phrase, or a sentence. The second part of the transactional stage is the two-word stage. Now, within a few months of producing one-word utterances, children will begin to produce two-word phrases. The two-word stage often occurs between 18, 20, maybe more months, consisting of utterances, generally two nouns or a noun and a verb. Now, this depends on what we count as an occurrence of two distinct words. So now here we have what? Two distinct words used together. They are combined to be produced together. And now the child begins around, or this stage begins around, as I said, 18 to 20, maybe more. It depends on the child's biological development. And by the time the child is 2 years old, a variety of combinations similar like baby chair, mommy eat, cat bat. Now these combinations of words mean something. Okay? Now we'll usually have a period. Now the phrase, for example, before I talk about the phrase here, we need to know more about the context. Now, in this stage, the two-word stage, it's very important stage for a child to acquire his or her first language. Why? Because now the child begins to be able to interact with the context, not just merely pronouncing or using words like the stage before, but now the child begins to combine between the word he or she produces with the context. Now, the phrase baby chair, for example, may be taken as an expression of possession. When that child produces baby chair, the meaning can be seen. This is a baby chair, to refer or to point to a baby chair. Or maybe to a request that the child may request to sit on that baby chair, put a baby in chair. Or as a statement, baby is in the chair, to refer to a baby that sits on a chair. This depends on the context. The context, of course, is a decisive factor here to let the parents, maybe the adults around, to interpret what the child is trying to say. Also, the book provides us with some nice examples, as you see here: big boat, mama dress, doggy bark, and so on. So whatever that communication or the intention of that communication is here, what we need to find that actual intent, the child intends to communicate, as I said. Now the child is trying to communicate because the child is now able to interact with the context very often. Such expressions, the significant functional consequences are that of the adults. Now, what is needed here for the adults, maybe the mama, the dad, or whoever, behave as if communication is taking place. This can happen when there is a feedback. So, the child is given feedback by adults to help the child to produce more and more words. That is, the child not only produces speech, but also receives feedback. This is what I mean by the feedback. Confirming that the utterance worked. Confirming that what you said, is okay. by clapping, by smiling, by shouting, or whatever. So it depends here on the adult how to interact with the child, but mostly important, the child receives here what feedback from adults to confirm that the child is interacting with the context, reacting, responding correctly to what is given before him or her. Moreover, by the age of 2, whether the child is producing 20, you see 20 to 3 distinct words. Distinct words means these words are understandable and they are pure. He or she will be capable of understanding 5 times as many and will typically be treated as an entertaining conversational partner by the principal caregiver. The last part of the transactional stage is the telegraphic speech. The telegraphic speech. You see here we arrive at word speech here. Now this happens between 2 and 2.5 years old, where the child begins producing a large number of utterances that can be classified as multiple word speech. Now this feature or the salient feature of this or these utterances ceases to be the number of words. Now the child begins to produce a larger number of words, but the variation in word form that begins to appear is very important to be noted. What is noted here is that this stage is described as what? As the telegraphic speech. Why? Because the child, now again, the definition of the highlighted or the words that are in bold can be found at the end of the book. This is number 1. Can be found right here, can be driven right here, and also you can go back to the book I suggested, or the dictionary I suggested by David Acosta under the title of A Dictionary of Linguistics and Phonetics. All these sources cover the definition of the telegraphic speech. Now the telegraphic speech is or starts between 1 to 2.5 years old, where the child is found to produce or to be able to produce multiple word speech, and it can be features to be strings of words that are combined to be put together. Now this is characterized. Now here we have what? Some characterizations or features related to the telegraphic speech by strings of words, like what? Lexical morphemes in phrases or sentences like this shoe all wet. This is one example. Another example, cat drink milk, daddy go bye bye. Now what is found here? We have what? A correct word order, cat drink milk. But what is missing here is the what? Is the morphology, because you know for an adult instead the adult can say cat drinks milk, or daddy goes bye bye. Maybe daddy went bye bye, not go without s. Now, as you see. Now, as I said, these combinations of words are put correctly in the correct order. But what is missing here is what? Is the morphology. A later stage within the telegraphic speech, after the organization of the words, and these words are put in the correct way, a number of grammatical inflections begin to appear in some of the words, forms, and simple prepositions. Now again, the child within this period tries to use the grammatical inflections in the correct way, as well as the use of prepositions like in or on to refer to a place. Also used. By the age of 2.5, the child's vocabulary is expanding very rapidly, and the child is initiating more to acquire increased physical activity, includes like running. So all these activities, I mean, the development in the language is associated with the development of some physical activities, which includes running and jumping. By 3 years, the vocabulary has grown to hundreds of words, and pronunciation has become clearer. You see, instead of saying, for example, dada, maybe the child tries to use clearer pronunciation to use the word. At this point, it's worth considering what kind of influence the adults have in the development of child speech. So now this is the result of what? Of the feedback given by the adults. And here it also a need for adults need to interact or to spend much more time with the child to help that child to produce a better language. The last station in the journey of this video is the acquisition process, through which we are going to be more acquainted with some related theories that see the child of that see if children are guided or instructed to acquire their own first language. Now, it's often assumed that the child is, in some sense, being taught the language. Now, this idea states that children are taught the language, but it's proved to be refuted, of course. Now, the idea is not really supported by what the child actually does. So the child's real world differs from the statement that says that language is taught. Their behavior in the real world proves the opposite, proves they behave normally in a way which contradicts with the idea of that language is taught. Of course, language is not taught. Let's see more. For the vast majority of children, no one provides any instruction on how to speak the language. You see, we have now two assumptions here: the way or the idea how to speak the language. A more accurate view, what should be stated is that children are taught some possible ways of using the language, but not how to speak the language. And there is a difference here, a distinct difference between how to speak the language and how to use the language. How to speak the language means that children are possibly able to be taught to know the immediate meaning of the word. They are taught to, or they are successful in being taught to construct the context of that word, where that word is used, or when that word is used on this or on that occasion. This idea is refuted, is rejected. What is successful is that they are taught by adults how or the ways of using the language, not how to speak the language. This is one thing. Now, the children's linguistic projection appears to be mostly a matter of trying out construction and testing whether they work or not. Now, let's move here to the second part of this section. Okay. Now, it's simply not possible that the child is acquiring the language principally through adult instruction. Again, similar to the idea of teaching the language, here we have the statement of instruction that can be given to the child or to a child to acquire his or her first language. Now, certainly, children can be here to repeat versions. I purposely highlight this word version of what adults say. Now, for example, or what the word version or versions mean here is that they may hear the correct pronunciation of a particular word, but they use their own version of pronouncing that word. For example, picture may be stated, or maybe that child is addressed with the word picture. So say picture, the child might not, I said might not, respond in the way or similar to the adult's pronunciation. That child may say picture instead of picture. That's why here we find they repeat their own versions of what adults say on occasion, and they are clearly in the process of adopting a lot of vocabulary from the speech they hear. Now, here we have a clear evidence that children can save or have the possibility to save what they hear, but they are not subject to use or to interact with the words, phrases, or sentences they hear immediately. maybe they use these phrases or words in a different context. In the beginning, they may use or state some of the addresses on occasions that are irrelevant to the context, to the real context. They sometimes, in a later stage, know how to construct that version or that real version of the usage of the words or phrases addressed to them. However, adults simply do not produce many of the expressions that turn up children's process. This is again an evidence to what I have been saying. Now it's more important to be right acquainted with learning through imitation, and you see here there is a question mark. It means, do children learn or acquire the language through imitation? Let's see. Similar evidence against imitation as the basis of the child's speech production has been found in studies of the structures used by young children. Now again, this theory is refuted, is declined, because in a way or another, some children might be successful in imitating what adults say to them. But for the majority of children, this theory proves to be unsuccessful because children are not able to construct what an adult says to them. No, of course, they are not subject to imitate perfectly what that adult says. Let's look at this dialogue here. This is the sentence said by an adult. The dogs are hungry. The dogs are hungry. It's a correct sentence, of course. Look, here we have what? The child response, dog hungry. So there is no S plural here, and as well there is no verb are. Another example, the owl who eats candy runs fast. Okay, it's a way of teaching the child, but the adult seems to be unsuccessful to help that child to imitate what that adult says. Now, I will eat a candy and he run fast. You see here, we have a drop H to the article there, and here we have a new insertion of a word, this a conjunction, which is and you see here we have no third person singular S. So these two examples, among many of course, prove that children cannot learn through imitation. It is likely that children, you see here the last two lines, that the children understand what the adults are saying. They understand that dogs are hungry, but they do not imitate the complete sentence of the adult. In these examples, they just have their own way, their own version again of expressing what they understand. Now, the second theory is that learning through correction. Are, again, children subject to learn or acquire their language through correction? Let's see. Now, it's also unlikely that adult corrections are very effective. You see here, they are not very effective at once, determiner of how the child speaks. A lot of very amusing conversation snippets involving an adult attempt to correct the child's speech. Let's see the demonstration of this theory here. Look, this is very important. Here we have a dialogue between a child and a mother. See? Now the child said, my teacher holded the baby rabbits and we patted them. The mother here is trying to correct the wrong uses of this verb conjugation, holded. Look. Did you say your teacher held? You see here, holded and held. This is the mother version of using the correct usage of the verb hold, held, and this is the version of the child as you see. The child's response is yes, which means that he understood what is meant by held, but the actual use, the real word use of the verb held is found to be holded instead of held, which means that the child is still immature to use the correct past form or past conjugation of the verb hold. Instead, he used or she used hold it instead of held. Now, this is, you see here, one factor that seems to be important in the child acquisition process is the actual use of sound. Now, the story has not ended with the use of verbs or the correct forms of verbs, whether they are in the present or in the past form. Also, it is related to the pronunciation or to the sounds and words combinations. Now, we have an experiment conducted by Weir in 1966. It's about recording a child while laying in bed alone, who could be heard with words and phrases like this here. I go this way. I go this way. You see here? This DIS refers to this instead of this. But again, the child here laying in bed alone, but had been recorded to know more about the version or the real version that a child in this age produced at that time. Now again here, imitation, the theory of imitation proved to be unsuccessful for children to acquire their own first language. When we look more closely at the child's development beyond the telegraphic stage, we can trace specific linguistic features that begin to turn up. Now, of course, this is a new development in the child. However, the language is not pretty mature here. It needs some more modifications. And these modifications are acquired through the process of time, through the course of time, of course. Begin to turn up on regular basis in this 3D stream of speech emerging from the little kata box. Now, I think this is enough with this video. The next video, inshallah, will include the remaining parts in this chapter. It talks about, or these sections and subsections delve into the last, let's say, the last stage of acquiring a language, and that we find a cute development in terms of morphology, syntax, as well as semantics. And with this video, I would say thank you for listening and watching.